delay. So in the meantime, let me introduce myself. So I'm Gaurav. I represent VMRAY in APAC. So VMRAY is a startup. We are almost around 10-year-old organization, headquartered in Germany, and we are basically helping our customers to detect the zero-day attacks. We are talking about, nowadays I think it's very common in the news. You heard about there are a lot of ransomware attacks which are happening. The recent one was the AIMS, which was there. Now the question comes in is why these kinds of attacks are still happening. So the fact is that almost all the organizations, they have kind of cybersecurity, good cybersecurity infra. They have deployed all the tools, but still that attacks are happening. And I think the fact is that these attacks are happening because it's, I would say, more about the deployment model based on which the current solutions are being deployed, and in some of the cases the old technology being used. So just to give a brief about VMRAY. So VMRAY was founded back in 2013 by these two gentlemen, Dr. Carson William and Ralph Wood. These two guys have been in the malware sandboxing domain since 2006. They were the first one to launch the commercial sandbox back in 2006, and after that they have, I can say today that almost all the sandboxing tools which are available in the market are basically, are passed through them, or they have some role in those product development. And maybe talking about I think let me just give a brief about what is Sandbox. Sandbox is basically a virtual environment, which is where when there is any attack, antivirus or malware enter to your network. So the sandboxing is an environment where we actually get the malware inside our sandbox, and we actually provide them a real environment which looks like the customer, or the organization environment. And once the malware goes into that environment and find out, okay, it's a real environment, they try to execute their process, which can be downloading some files, uploading some files, data, encrypting your systems, it can do anything. And that's where, so this is a sandbox, and that's where it's become very important that your sandbox should be designed in such a way that these malwares are not able to detect the environment, whether it's a sandboxing environment or a real environment. And that's one of the uniqueness I will share about VMRAY. This is just to share a snapshot about VMRAY. So you see the best users. We have, as I told you, we are startup, so we are not have a large number of lists, but still we have 14 out of the Fortune 100 customers. We have 4 out of the 5 large tech giants. Almost all the known consulting firms, they use VMRAY to provide services, consulting services to their customers, or helping them for the incident response. We have around the financial institutions, large government organizations. I would say that today almost all the CERT organizations globally are using VMRAY. So I can say that it's almost all the one, maybe 90-95% of the CERT organizations globally use VMRAY. In terms of, we have 100%, more than 100% retention rate, which clearly shows the customer confidence in us. So they believe that VMRAY is helping them, for basically fighting the zero-day attacks, helping them to respond back to the attacks. So what we today, in terms of, as I mentioned, we already got a lot of security solutions, but still the attacks are happening. So what basically the challenge is? So now if we have been talking to different large enterprises, government organizations, and banking institutions, one of the biggest challenges is, they don't have teams to basically counter those attacks or to understand those attacks. One of the key reasons is, as a malware analyst or the SOC analyst, these are very limited resources available in the market. So it's very difficult, for almost all the organizations to have such kind of resources within their team. And that's one of the factor which obviously, is one of the basic factor which is not helping the operations to stop these kinds of attacks. And when we're talking about unknown malware, what unknown malwares are. So one is, we all know what is antivirus. Antivirus is being used to detect the known malware files, known malicious file, or known virus. However, even they are now basically the hackers are working, they are they are more faster than all the vendors, and they are working day to day to create new malwares, new viruses which are not being detected. Even once a new malware or a virus is detected, it takes sufficient time to be updated in the database. So till the time the virus is detected or the malware is detected and being updated to the database, it can be few hours or it can be even few weeks. And so it means even after detection, for some of the systems where you have some antivirus tools, it's still having a zero-day attack. Time-consuming analysis. So if you talk about the standard timeline, once the attack happened, so firstly, the average timeline which is required to detect an attack is around 200 days. So which means the malware is already into your environment for 200 days, and you never know what all damage has already been done. Secondly, once you detect there is an attack, its required around 87 to 90 days to basically understand the malware and respond to the attacks, which is again one of the biggest challenges, because if you can detect these attacks faster, if you can respond back to these attacks faster, you can actually lower down your damage. And that's why I was talking about the response time. So another challenge, which is why basically it's becoming a problem, because I can tell you if you have been using antivirus tools, most organizations have antivirus tools. You must have seen, maybe take an example of email. Most of you will see that they are mostly the emails which are coming with some attachments are moving to spam, whether it's a a genuine email or it's a spam email. And that's one of the problem is that if you have something urgent or something important coming in, but it has been detected as a malicious or suspicious by your antivirus, it will go to quarantine, and then you have to wait for your IT team to release it back. So it takes a lot of time. So that's where the false positive. And now when we, as I talked previously, that the response to the time required to get into the behavior of a malware is around 87 to 90 days. And suppose if it's a false positive, which means you have wasted almost around 80 to 90 days, and later on you find out it was just a false positive, it was not any kind of attack. So that's one of the key, I will say, another challenge which most of the enterprises are facing. They have lots of false positives coming in. And again, now the thing is, due to this reason, again, they are, sometimes if you have existing antivirus tools or some of the existing sandboxing, they will tell you it's a suspicious activity or a malicious, and they will give you a risk score. They are not going to tell you why it's a risk, why it's a suspicious activity, what kind of operations they are going to do. So everything is not being shared by them, and that's the reason. What happens most of the time as a malware analyst, if I get like many errors, what I will do, the one which have a risk factor of 1 below 5 by 10, I will keep it aside. I won't even investigate them. And then here, I cannot name the customer in recent case, recently with one of the government organization, where there was an attack, and basically that sandboxing they were using, they gave a rating of 1 out of 10, which means it's a low risk, and it was a suspicious, not even a malicious, verdict. And based on this, the analyst decided to release the file in the network, and it was actually an embedded ransomware attack. And once the file was into the network, the ransomware got executed. And another is, as I said, because the tools are just providing you whether it's a malicious or a suspicious and maybe a risk rating. Now it's become 100% responsibility of the analyst to decide what to do with the file. So one is they go to internet, they use different tools in the market to find out the details, but still they are able. Firstly, it's required, as I mentioned, a lot of time to do that, which is around 90 days. Secondly, since it's a manual part, they may miss some details information, they may miss out some information of the malware, and due to which, again, these kinds of things happen. So one is, if the malware analyst can get each and every detail of a malware, it's become easier for them to take their decision. So now, I tell you how the current existing environment works. So one of the things which I've been, when we're talking to many customers, they are saying, we need to have an inline sandboxing or an antivirus tool. Now the problem is, when we are talking about an inline, the biggest challenge is that you cannot hold the file for long. Maybe a few seconds, that's the maximum time you can hold the file. Now the problem with the inline is, since you cannot hold the file, the tools doesn't have enough time to analyze the file. So what normally the tools do, first is alert validation. So basically, so first is in terms of the process, if I say, they start with the, what we say as a reputation. So in terms of the reputation, basically it's like a normal what all the antivirus works. So, they check out the hash value, they check out the name. If that's already known virus, okay, they will detect it. If it not, maybe the next step, some of the tools will go forward. They will do static analysis, what we call as, where basically they will, if there is a macro in the Excel sheet, they will extract that macro, try to find out the information on that. If not, they will release the file because it's only a few seconds they have. Whereas what VMRAY do, VMRAY has a third step of analysis, what we call as dynamic, where we ensure that the malware once come into our sandbox, they execute their behavior. And we have to accept the fact that malwares are more smarter than any of the tools in the market. So that's where what we do, like, for example, if the malware comes in, nowadays, if you see in terms of the recent attacks which has happened, one of the common functionality which most of the malwares are doing, they go to a sleep mode. Once they enter into a network, they go for a sleep mode which can be few hours, few days, or few months. And that's where, as I told you, the other tools can only hold the file for a few seconds. The behavior remain undetected. So whereas what VMRAY do, that we actually speed up the CPU speed and change in order to bring down the sleep time, which should be normally we bring down the sleep time less than a minute, so that we make sure that the file is executed in our environment. What other tools do, they basically change the server time, which can be easily detected by a malware. And that's where even if the malware sees there is a server time change, they will obviously, they don't go into a sleep mode, but still they don't perform any activity, so that the other tools will think it like it's a standard file. So that's the way for in case of like target attacks, what they normally do, once they enter into a network, they will try to find out, okay, if you have a wallpaper for an organization, if not, they know it's a sandboxing environment. So again, they don't execute their behavior. They may even ask for a server temperature. They may even see whether the keyboard is, the keyboard there's any input on the keyboard, the mouse is moving. So all those functionalities that malware is trying to find out. So VMRAY take care of all these functionalities, and again, we are different on the architecture. All the sandbox in the market are based on VMs. They are based on virtual machines, and that's where they cannot, give a real behavior of what a normal bare metal server will do. Whereas VMRAY is fully deployed on a bare metal server, we are not VM based, so that's another functionality which helps us in terms of the deployment model to behave like a real environment. Talking about one is the alert validation, and I think this is one of the common problems which most of the enterprises are facing. That's they have lots of false positives coming from EDRs, they have false positives coming from same email solutions, and that's where it's basically make this task as a very tedious task, and that's why, as I told you, they only focus on very few files, not all the files which have been malicious. So what VMRAY does it, we actually removes those false positives. So we almost bring down to zero the false positive. And how we do that is basically, as I told you, once we analyze the sample, we actually give you the full detailed behavior. So for example, what other tool will do, that if there is a read and write operation, they will say it's a suspicious. Whereas what we are going to do is we are going to tell you what kind of read and write operation, where it was performed, what kind of data it was, so that it's easier for the malware analyst to decide whether it's really a harmful operation or it's a standard operation. Now, another challenge is that, as we are talking about as a cybersecurity infra, the enterprise or the organizations have deployed multiple tools in in their network. So what happens? All these tools have their own sandbox, but the challenge is none of these tools will work together with the other vendor. And that's where sometimes the problem is that the analysts have different tools, or the SOC team have different tools, the reports coming from different tools from the same file. And due to which they have multiple reports which they have to analyze multiple informations, and which makes the task more difficult. Whereas VMRAY, I will say, can say that it's the only tool which can integrate with all your existing security infra, be it starting from antivirus to firewall to EDR, SOAR, XDR, same platform, or your threat intel platform, everything. We can integrate VMRAY with everything. So that's what we are talking about, the LSTR, so that if all these are integrated, the malware analyst can only get a single report with the detailed information. So they don't have to go through the multiple tools. So just maybe giving you a brief, update on like what are the use cases where customers are using VMRAY. So as I told you, one is the email security. So we are not the one who are providing as an email security solution. So what we do, we integrate with your existing email security solution. So what happens once your email security solution detects any suspicious email, instead of sending it to quarantine, the mail can be forwarded to VMRAY, and VMRAY will check each and every attachment, URLs, even the mail text body to find out if there is any malicious content. If not, we will confirm back whether it's a clean mail or a suspicious mail with all the full details. So you don't need to wait for a long time. You normally get this kind of information within 1 minute. So after 1 minute, you are basically with the information you can decide whether to open that attachment or not. So that's we call it as abuse email box also, because some of the organizations which are, they are more trying to be also training their users to understand how these attacks are coming. Because if I say 95% of the attacks are coming through the email. So normally we have a feature where we have a plugin in Outlook. So if a user see an email which he thinks is suspicious, maybe a finance department get an attachment with the invoice from a user they don't know or they don't even work with, what the guy can do is they just click on the plugin and that email will be submitted to VMRAY, and within 1 minute you will get to know whether that email is suspicious or clean. So you can do that. Secondly, alert validation, which I talked about, the alerts which are coming from media firewall, we can validate those alerts. Blind spot detection, this we talked about during which normally happens during the manual analysis. When the manual analysis is doing the details and trying to find out the behavior, there is a blind spot. So threat intel extraction. So once you submit a sample to us, we are also acting as a threat intel tool. So we provide you the all threat intel in terms of IOCs, related samples, everything to you. Incident response, as I said, based on the reports what we provide, basically it makes the incident response team life easier to basically respond back to the attacks faster. Forensics, we have also forensic companies who are using for VMRAY, because once you use VMRAY tool, you even get the detail of even into the port level. If there is any data being uploaded, you even get to know the full data payload which is being uploaded or downloaded, which IP it was, which country it was. Everything you can find out from here. One of the most, I will say the biggest use case which we are seeing in most of the countries in Asia at least, the file sanitization. So there are two kinds of use cases with the file sanitization. So for example, we are working with many of the government and the defense agencies where they have an air-gapped network. So the problem is they have to transfer the data from internet network to an air-gapped network daily. And currently they are only relying on the antivirus. So what now they do, once they have this data, at the end of the day, they collect all the documents which they need to transfer to a air-gapped network into a pen drive. They go to a separate server where VMRAY is installed, plug in that pen drive, and then VMRAY will check each and every file and separate out the files based on the verdict, whether it's clean or malicious. So clean file will be stored in a separate folder and malicious file will be stored in a separate folder. So after that, they again come back with a separate pen drive, copy the clean folder and take it to a gap network. So in this case, we also detect the zero-day attacks. And another is where we can integrate with your existing document management systems or web portals. So we have a use case in India with one of the government agencies where they have a web portal and their data is coming. So they have data coming from, their users are uploading the documents, different kind of documents. So what they're doing is once the document is uploaded, VMRAY check each and every document, and if it's clean, then only it's stored into the database, otherwise it's stored into a separate area. Yeah, so if you see, these are the list of the vendors we are integrated with. So, we have the SIM vendors, we have SOMA, we have Threat Intel, we have EDR, XDR, so all these are integrated with us. And basically, the use cases we actually help them to provide more better threat intel and to reduce their false positive. This is just a snapshot of a report. So if you see that, this is like a detailed report of a single malware. So which means each and every step which the malware has done during once it's entered into the sandboxing environment, you get a detailed information about each and every step, plus a risk score of each and every process they have done. So as I told you, you can apply everywhere. You can integrate with your homegrown application through the APIs that we have connectors for the known vendor, for the most of the vendors available. Yeah, so that's more on a summary, like what VMRAY helps. If I say in terms of, to summarize, we help in advanced threat detection. We help you to reduce your alerts in terms of features coming from medias and all. We help basically the malware analyst or the SOC team to respond faster to any kind of attacks. Yeah. So if you have any further queries or if you want to see the demo, please visit our website. Thank you.